Welcome back! So, today we are gonna have the ultimate showdown of Stalinium. The IS-2 1944 versus the IS-1, which is the top dog of the Soviet tech tree. Now, on first look at the tech tree, you might think that the IS-2 1944, being the last tank on the tree, having its lovely sloped armor and its massive 122 mil gun and its Dishka on the roof, that it might be the biggest, baddest tank in the entire Soviet tech tree. And you might be right. But the IS-1 gives it very stiff competition. So, let's get into it. The IS-2 1944, it has a slightly different chassis than the IS-2 and the IS-1. It gives up about 20 millimeters of frontal hull armor, but instead gets more sloping. Both of these tanks that we're going to be looking at today are not upgraded. The upgrades available to them give them increased braking force, suspension dampening, engine power, shot deviation, vertical and horizontal aiming speed. They're all things that are nice to have, but at the end of the day, this isn't really a tank game, and most of what you get by upgrading the tanks isn't that big of a deal. Also, I'm just not willing to shell out almost 100,000 silver to upgrade a single tank. I am considering picking up the Battle Pass IS-1. I want to see what the new vehicles are in the upcoming Battle Pass, and if nothing new tickles my fancy, then I'll be picking up the IS-1. So, starting with the IS-2 1944, you're getting a 122mm D25T cannon with 28 rounds. You're getting one 12.7mm Dishka, one 7.62mm DT. You're getting 100 mils on the front, 90 mils on the side, 60 on the back, 30 on the bottom, and 30 on the top. And for the turret, you're also getting 100 mils on the front. You get the idea. You get 442 horsepower at 2,000 RPM, weighing in at 46.2 tons, with a top speed of 37 kilometers an hour. Again, this is a stock vehicle. It'll go a little bit faster if you upgrade it, but in most of the maps that you're going to be in, I don't think it really matters. Now, what does the competition have for today? On the IS-1, we have an 85mm D5T cannon, which you may recognize from the T-34-85 D5T, with 59 rounds. You also go at 37 kilometers an hour, and your frontal hull armor is 120, with sides at 90, back at 60, bottom at 25, and your turret is 100 on the front, 100 on the side, 20 on the back, and 60 on the top. You weigh in at 44 tons, you have 442 horsepower at 2,000 RPM. Basically, the biggest difference between the two tanks is their main armament. Now, the hull shape is a little bit different. You do have more armor on the IS-1, but you have better sloping on the IS-244. The sloping probably is enough to make the hull better on the IS-244, but really the key difference between the two is you get a relatively quick-firing 85 on the IS-1, and on the IS-2 you get a very slow-firing 122. So, the playstyle of the IS-2 is very peekaboo in nature. Your gun can be absolutely devastating. It will go through most things that you aim at, and in most cases you don't really have to put a whole lot of time into aiming the gun. Now, there are situations where you'll get an angled enemy or they'll be moving, and you do want to aim, because I've had shots where I thought, hey, you know what, I can just shoot it, and I ended up hitting like the corner of a Tiger II's turret because he was moving and he was angled, and if I'd actually taken the 3.5 seconds to aim the shot, I probably would have killed him. And the thing is, with the 122, if you miss, if you bounce, if you have the wrong ammo type loaded, it's all over. So, the tank does very well if you can find positions where you have cover, where you can pull out when you're about 3/4 of the way loaded, so that you can stop, settle the gun, fire the gun, and then back into cover. The main reason for that is when you run up against, say, a Panther can fire about 3 shots for every 1 shot that you fire. And while your 1 shot stands a very good chance of killing that Panther, the fact that the front of your turret only has 100 mils of armor means that the Panthers are shooting right through your turret. In my experience, the armor of the IS-1 and the IS-2 does not hold up against any near-peer threat, whether it's a Panther, especially if it's a Tiger II, or if it's a Tiger 1. If the guy doesn't know where to aim, you can bounce them. If you angle and they decide not to shoot your turret, you can bounce them. But in my experience, in most cases, if they can see, like, even if you're in cover, if they can still see part of you, they will shoot you, and they will almost always pen you. Now, the IS-2's gun, if you load HE, can be absolutely devastating. We were fighting in Berlin earlier, and we were pulling up to the Reichschancellery, and I was sitting out on the street shooting over the objective into the building. And the way I was describing it to one of my friends who was in chat with me was, if I shoot the room that the enemy are coming through, like where the doorway is, I'll probably kill everybody in that room, and I'll probably kill everybody in the room next to it too. Now, that may not literally be true, but it feels that way. The gun has an enormous splash radius. You'll aim at people and you'll shoot at them, and you'll get kills on people that you didn't even know were there, that are half a block down the street from where you're shooting. The gun is absolutely monstrous. You can lay waste to the enemy. Likewise, the Dishka on the roof comes in clutch. Even though you may not always have your gun up, if the enemy are infantry, and they're not staring at you, so you can poke your commander out and you can, shoot at them, or if the enemy's in a relatively thin-skinned vehicle, for example, I ran into Panzerwerfer, you can absolutely dismantle them with the Dishka. It is very, very powerful. But you do have to expose your commander to use it. And to that end, both of these tanks only have 4-man crews, so you don't really have a whole lot of depth to fall back on once you start taking casualties. More than once, I've gotten into positions where everybody except for one guy in the tank died, and I had one guy who was trying to move the tank, load the tank, and shoot with the tank, which, when you have a gun that reloads as long as this one, and you have to duck into cover with the tank, it makes a very interesting playstyle. Now, by comparison, the IS-1 has a much, much more versatile gun. You can still pen most enemies, but you can't pen them from every angle, and you just can't force shots with it. If you get the side of any of your enemies, you can kill them. If you can see weak spots on the front of a lot of the enemy tanks, you can deal with them too. You also fire fast enough that you can shoot to disable the enemy tank and then clean it up later. Like, it's very realistic with the IS-1 to shoot for the gun, to shoot for the treads, and then to take out the tank at your convenience. You can't do that with the IS-2. The reload's just too long. Like, theoretically, with the IS-2, you could shoot their gun out, but the thing is, in the amount of time it will take you to reload the gun on the IS-2 1944, the enemy will have gotten out and they will have repaired their gun. Which, if you sit in the open and you've got your Dishka, maybe you can stop that from happening, but it's not something that I would want to bet my life on. With the IS-1, you still get very respectable HE performance. Remember, it's an 85 mil gun. Like, the IS-1 is probably the close comparison to the Tiger II-P. They have 3 more mils on their gun. You both have 100 mil turret faces. He has better hull armor, but that's probably the fairest comparison if you haven't played the IS-1 and you've played Germany. But neither the IS-1 nor the IS-2 has the staying performance that the Tiger II-H has, although when you play the Tiger II-H into Russia, it feels basically the same as playing an IS-1 because a lot of the Russian tanks can go through you. You're not nearly as tanky or invulnerable as you might feel against the Allies. But at least as the Germans, you have the potential of not fighting Russia. When you're playing Russia, you're always going to fight Germany, and it doesn't matter which of these two tanks you play, the Germans are always going to be able to pen you. But with the IS-1, you're going to be able to respond more often to different threats. So, for example, if you're shooting at enemy infantry, there's no tanks, and a tank pops up, with the IS-1, there's a good chance that you can you can fire the shell off, switch your shell, and respond. You just need to force him to miss one shot. With the IS-2, you need to force him to miss 2 to 3 shots, and that becomes much more precarious. Now, with perks, both of the tanks become better. In my experience, I had the loader and the first guy that I set up the gunner the second, then the driver and the commander, because I just didn't have fully leveled up soldiers when I first started out, but I absolutely had to get the perk that makes it so that you don't lose progress on your load by switching shell type. That's a must-have for the IS-2 to be usable in any situation. You have to have that. And equally valuable is the 20% reload speed. Because without it, it just takes an absolute eternity to load the gun. If you have both of those perks, you can load the gun fast enough that it doesn't feel completely awful, and you can switch your shell when you need to. And there are many, many, many occasions that I got into where I had AP loaded, right? And I looked around and there's no enemy tanks. There's a bunch of infantry. Alright, I'll fire the shot off, we'll load HE, we'll shoot the infantry. Oh no, there's a Panther coming. And then I needed to switch back to AP. And there were as many situations that also happened where I had AP loaded, I got rid of it to load HE, I saw a Panther or Tiger coming, so I switched back to AP. Then they got bombed or shot by the other tank, and then I switched back to HE. And the thing is, your reload time is so long that you can get into these situations where you swap back and forth between your shell type while it's loading, because the battlefield is just changing that quickly around you. Like, you are not a reactive tank in the IS-2. You need these perks in order to be able to play the tank at all. Like, without it, because I played it without a loader for a while, without a loader with these perks for a while, and it just feels abysmal. You get into so many situations where you just feel like you don't have the right shell loaded, and you're just trying to chase the battle and just try to keep up, and you can't. And because of how often you lose crew in this tank, I put those perks on the driver, I put them on the commander, and then with the gunner, I didn't put the reload speed, I put the improved targeting on, but I still kept the option to change shells without losing progress. Because you're going to regularly lose crew in these tanks. They're thin enough that, and the enemy have good enough guns that you're going to keep losing crew. So you need your replacement crew to be able to load the gun and not, completely lose your ability to change your shell type. Now, the driver, I didn't go that route. I gave him normal driver perks. He's got the thing where you don't lose speed after gear shift. He can brake better. He can shift gears better. You know, normal driver stuff. But that's mostly because I figured if the driver was the last guy in the tank, we're probably up a creek without a paddle, so it is what it is. As far as implementing the IS-1, if the IS-2 is all about peekaboom and hiding, the IS-1 pretty much plays like your average tank. It's basically an enormous T-3485, so if you've played a T-3485 before, you pretty much know what you're getting into. This is just a minor upgrade over the T-3485. Now, let's get to the crux of this video. Should you use the IS-1 or should you use the IS-2? I think a lot of what I've presented probably makes it sound like the IS-1 is the better tank. And when I first set out to start getting footage for this video, I did so because I played the IS-2 once or twice. I had already played the IS-1 a little bit, and I thought, wow, the IS-2 is such a hunk of junk. And so what I started doing is playing an IS-2 game, and then the next game I would put on my IS-1. I didn't play the Russians enough before the merge to have both tank crews that can use the IS-1, so it is what it is. I couldn't compare them in the same battle. I had to go one battle, next battle, right? And what I found very quickly was there are aspects of the IS-2 that I actually really like, and I really missed when I was playing the IS-1. Now, the IS-1, in general, I think feels better to play. Having a faster reload time, it's really a big deal. You may not be able to kill as many infantry in one shot, but you can fire the gun at least twice for every IS-2 shot. I'm not sure if it's 3. I'm pretty sure it's 2 and like maybe a half. 2 and like a third, 2 and a half, something like that. But it means that you can engage 2 different targets. It means that you can switch your shell type and deal with emerging threats pretty easily. It makes it so that you have way more versatility to deal with all manner of different things, and you can keep up with the pace of the battle a little bit better. But I also found myself in situations where I would have the front of an enemy tank. I couldn't see the whole front of the enemy tank, so I couldn't pick out weak spots, and because of that, I was having a hard time dealing with them, and I knew that if I had the 122, I would be able to just punch through that tank and I could probably kill it. Likewise, I would get into situations where I would see infantry running into like a building or something, and I would put a shell through the doorway behind them, and I wouldn't kill anybody. And I would sit there and I'd be like, man, if I had the 122, I would kill everybody in that building right now. And so what I'm saying is that I think the IS-1 in most situations is more usable. It feels better to use. It's more reliable. But the situations where the IS-2 performs well in, it excels in those situations. Like, if there's a horde of infantry coming towards you, the IS-2 every single time. Because one shot is going to wipe out most of them, and then you still have a Dishka on the roof, and you can mow down anybody who's left, and if they're in soft cover, it doesn't matter. There are situations where the IS-2 is just amazing. Like, if you could guarantee that your gun was going to be loaded every time an enemy tank spawned, and you knew where they were coming from, the IS-2. Every time. Because when that tank pulls up, it doesn't really matter which way they're looking or how much of their tank they're showing you. There's a good chance you're going to be able to pen it. And you may not one-shot it, you may only kill part of the enemy crew, but you don't always get that ability with the IS-1. That being said, If I had to choose between the IS-1 and the IS-2, and I could only have one tank, and the other one would just be removed from my garage, I'd pick the IS-1. I just think it's a much more versatile tank. I think it's much more usable. I think it's much more comfortable. I think it's much more user-friendly. I think it's much more reactive. I think the gun, while it isn't the best gun, is good enough. Like, if you see an enemy squad and you shoot at the enemy squad, you're gonna kill the whole enemy squad. It's not like you're running around with small caliber HE from BR2 and you need to hit people in their feet to kill individual soldiers. Like, no, if you see an enemy squad crossing a field and you shoot in the middle of the squad, you're gonna kill most of the squad. Like, it is a very good gun. If you see the side of a Panther, you're probably going to one-shot a Panther. If you see the side of a Tiger, there's not going to be a Tiger anymore. Even if you see the front of them, in some cases you can deal with them very effectively from the front. You just need to be more careful with where you're aiming the shot. So, the other thing that I'll add here is that there is a readily available gold order vehicle for the IS-1. And the thing is, and this is a bit of a problem with the Russian tech tree in my opinion, but it's to your benefit here. There is not another Russian tank squad after the T-34-85D5T, which is their main, not their main, it is their BR-4 tank. It's the first BR-4 tank you get. It's the second tank in BR in rank 4 that you research. But you don't get another tank crew after that. And I think that's a huge problem. Like, there are 6 tanks in the Russian tech tree that all use this one squad. Now, a few of them, like the T-34-85s, and I think the Su-85, can go onto a different squad that I have. But, effectively, the IS-244, the IS-2, and the IS-1 all share one crew. So you don't get the choice to take the 2 of them. And at least with Germany, I have way more options. And maybe I haven't really looked at their tech tree squad, so they might run into the same issue. But I feel like Russia needs one more squad. Like, I think they should get the squad with the T-34-85D5T, and I think they should get another squad with the IS-1, and then the IS-1 should be able to go on both squads, and the IS-2s should go on the second squad that you would get. But anyway, the point here is that you can get a gold order IS-1, and you can use it as soon as you get the first T-34-85. And that alone, I think, is huge in the IS-1's favor. Like, effectively what that means is if you get a gold vehicle order, you can grind out the T-34-85D5T, and realistically, you don't need to touch the Russian tank tree again after that. Unless you specifically want a tank like the IS-1 in the tech tree for some reason, or the IS-2, or the IS-244, like, unless you want something that comes after the T-34-85D5T, if you have that gold order, you may as well just research up to the T-34-85D5T, get the squad, spend your gold vehicle order, and then ignore the rest of the tanks there, because every one of those tanks, the next 5 tanks, are each going to be 15,000 silver. So, you're saving yourself a boatload of silver, and it means that if you're just getting into BR4 and you're just getting into BR5, it means that you can go and research way more important things, like your PPSH-41, or your AS-44, or your RD-44, or your LA-7. There's just better things that you can research, and effectively what that means in the context of this video is that the IS-1 is the top dog, and there isn't really a good reason to grind out the IS-2. Like, each one of these tanks, I have them all researched, so I can't see how much it is to research them. I imagine it's 170,000 research for all of them, so multiply that by 5, multiply 15,000 silver by 5. This is before you even look at upgrading your vehicles. If you want to play high-tier Russian tanks, just research the T-3485 D5T, spend a gold vehicle order, get the IS-1. Now you don't have to spend silver to upgrade it, you don't have to spend silver to buy it, you don't have to spend silver to buy 4 other tanks. The IS-1 is, in my opinion, the winner of the Stalinium Cup. It is top dog in the USSR tech tree, the bias king. It's not really biased, mind you. Like, the Soviet tanks are good, but they're not fantastic. They very often just get annihilated and one-shot by their German counterparts. So, let me know what your experiences have been playing Russian tanks. I think that they're a lot of fun. I think that if you put them in the right position, they can do a ton of work. You just have to be very careful with them. Like, they very much so feel like glass cannons. And let me know what your take is on the great Stalinium Cup. Are you Team IS-1 or are you Team IS-2? I like them both. I play them both. If I'm recommending the tank to somebody, though, IS-1 every day. Also, let me know what is your biggest kill count with one shell from the IS-2. I've seen some pretty big numbers pop up, but I'd be curious to know if anybody's broken, say, 30 kills. I'd be very impressed. It's definitely doable, but that is a lot of death for one shell. As per usual, get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.
Наши захватывают точку. Враг пытается захватить нашу точку. Противник наседает на точку.